Hello, movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, I am so excited. We are talking about episode 3 of House of the Dragon. I don't even know where this show can go from here, honestly. Like, can it get better? Can it? I submit that it cannot. I am blown away by this episode on multiple levels. And so there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched episode 3 yet, pause, go do that, come back and listen, join in the conversation. This one, I feel like there were two competing storylines for episode 3. One of those storylines obviously surrounds Daemon Targaryen, and the other storyline is Viserys and kind of Rhaenyra and Alicent Hightower and kind of what's been going on there. So between episode 2 and episode 3, there is a 3-year gap. And when we are introduced to everyone, it seems like Rhaenyra has really just not been speaking to anyone for that entire 3-year block of time. Alicent is very heavily pregnant with her and Viserys' second child, and they do have a son together who is celebrating his second birthday in this episode. And they're throwing like a big feast. They're going to have a stag hunt. It's an all-out, affair. At this point, I think, is when we start to see Viserys a little less as king and a little bit more as just a genuine, man. He seems very broken in this episode, and I would almost wager, or at least one of the things that I kept kind of thinking to myself through this episode was, gosh, being married to Alicent Hightower certainly has not made him happy. He seems broken, he seems very battered down, and it makes sense. The relationship between him and Rhaenyra is strained, I would say, pretty heavily at this point. And I think that because he now has a son, obviously, I feel like for the last 2 years, everyone around him has been hounding him to name Aegon, which is what he named his little baby boy, name Aegon as heir to the throne and take it away from Rhaenyra. And you see kind of his character in a completely new way. I sort of felt like he was a bit of a pushover, and he still definitely is. He still definitely doesn't seem like a very kingly person, in my opinion, who's willing to actually go and make those hard choices or stand firm in the choices that he makes. It almost kind of seems like he just avoids things, which makes sense because him and Rhaenyra seem to have that exact same issue, that instead of communicating with one another, they just haven't spoken to each other for 3 years. But you really get to see some really tender moments with Viserys where you can tell the political part of everything is starting to wear on him. He really just wants to have a cohesive family. And he knows, because of his station and because of who he is, that's not really possible. Rhaenyra, we do learn, has turned 17 in this year. So, of course, he's bringing people in front of her to try and get her to marry someone. And the first person that he throws in front of her is a Lannister. Of course it is. Of course it is. And are the Lannisters different back then from in Game of Thrones? No. Golly, no. They're still smug, very self-serving Lannisters. They are the same. So they did amazing casting as far as everyone is concerned, because when the Lannister, we've seen, I think, one of the Lannisters previously, but man, the dude that he brings in to be her potential suitor, yikes, just yikes, so pompous. Anyway, she clearly doesn't like him. That I feel like she's pretty obvious about in the episode. But so you get to see kind of that dynamic between Rhaenyra and Viserys and what's going on and how things are sort of going along with them and being fleshed out as far as who's going to still be sitting on the throne. And then on the other side of the episode, you have Daemon Targaryen's sort of storyline. And so essentially when he left and was cast out, in this 3 years, he has taken it upon himself to deal with the crab feeder problem. And so here is the part that I found at the same time incredibly epic and disappointing all in one. So getting to see Damon in this episode has definitely taken me from, wow, that dude's a dick, like I'm probably not going to enjoy him very much, to holy cow, Daemon Targaryen might be my favorite character. Like the badassery that happens with Daemon Targaryen, of course, because you've got dragons, you've got a war waging, you've got, flying flames and, boats sinking and people getting nailed, for the crab feeder to feed his crabs. And it's just incredible to witness. It's incredible to witness. At the same time, the crab feeder, spoilers, the crab feeder is like just dead at this point. Daemon Targaryen uses himself as essentially like, not a human shield. As bait, I guess. So he just runs straight out, pretends to wave the white flag of surrender, and then proceeds to just, in the most epic way, just cut everyone down. And like there's another dragon that comes out of it. I couldn't tell in this episode, like I don't know if it was very clear, maybe someone can clear it up for me, whether the dragon that you see kind of coming to his rescue with a different rider is a completely different dragon, or if that is just Daemon's dragon. I couldn't tell. I'll have to rewatch the episode again, but I couldn't tell if it was just a different rider with his dragon or an entirely new dragon. But yeah, so it ends up that like Daemon just ends up walking into these caves where the crab eater has been keeping all of his men, like that is their safety port, is inside these caves where it's just impossible to go in after them. Daemon draws everyone basically out of the caves. The crab eater runs in. He runs in after the crab eater and he just comes out with half this dude's body. Like he has hacked this guy in half and drags the upper part of his torso just like with him. And that is the part that I feel like is a little bit disappointing for me. I was incredibly intrigued about the crab eater and what his story was and what was going on there. And I expected him to be a villain for a while. Like I understood obviously House of the Dragon is political, yada yada, and brings down the fall of the Targaryens. We know that because that's where we pick up with Game of Thrones, that Daenerys and her brother are really like the last standing Targaryens. But I don't know. You introduced me to a character that looked interesting. I want to know about that character. Like, I'm not sure if the crab eater had dragon scales, the disease from Game of Thrones that we see there. Like, I'm not sure if that is what's happening with him, but he's missing a lot of his hair. He's wearing a mask. You can definitely see his skin is plagued with some sort of something. It looks like he potentially has been a bit deformed. And then he dies and that's it. And we don't see him anymore. And I have questions. I have questions that I need answers to. And I haven't finished reading the books. I've read through book 4, I want to say. So I haven't read like any of the material, I don't think, that follows along with what's going on with House of the Dragon. So all of this stuff, all of these characters are pretty new to me. So I don't know if the crab eater was like a bigger deal in the books, or if this is just one of those like not fleshed out storylines that we just kind of have to deal with. We've seen it and it's over and that's it. So that was the only like disappointing thing to me. But Daemon has risen in the ranks. I was very much a fan of Rhaenyra. Like, she was probably my favorite because Daenerys was my favorite and she reminded me of her. But in episode 3, I feel like Rhaenyra took a turn. Like, I mean, she's supposed to be, 14 in episodes 1 or 2, which would make her 17 in episode 3. And I feel like she was a lot stronger of a character in the first 2 episodes and a bit of just like a brat, in the third one. Like, instead of having crucial conversations with her dad, she just sort of refuses to talk to anyone for 3 years, which, makes sense. She's a kid. Her dad definitely should know better. Viserys should have known how to have a conversation with her like an adult. I'm not expecting her to, but she does this little tantrumy, I'm going to get on my horse and like fly off into the woods kind of thing. And that that I feel like was just kind of took her character a little bit down for me. And then seeing Daemon be all badass, I was like, okay, I can potentially replace one Targaryen with another Targaryen in terms of favorites. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Alicent, I have heard, is a lot more of a backstabby, character in the books. She seems very sus to me in the show. I know everybody has been saying like she seems very innocent and very, not to me at all. There is something very conniving about her, because even if she is just doing what her dad tells her to do, like she doesn't have to, but she is, and she wants it. I think she does in her mind, right? Wants to kind of just have that power. I don't know. There's like a weird evil sparkle in her eye that I don't trust at all. So I'm looking forward to not liking her very much throughout the show. I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of House of the Dragon episode 3. I am very excited for the next episode. I am loving this season so far. So let me know what you guys thought. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family. And I hope to see you in the next episode.